Thank you for the introduction. Dear testing friends, I'm very pleased to be one of the keynote speakers on this first conference. And I thought, let's talk what I did not learn from books on software testing. And you see in the background a case full of books. And indeed, today, if we see how testing is evolving, which evolutions have been we went through, then there are a lot of tons written about books. But to understand a little bit the case and why I'm presenting this topic, I want to tell about the context where I started in testing. So I'm working and living in Belgium, and I started in testing in the late 90s. Exactly, it was 98, so now already for about 24 years ago. And at the time, and I hope you can see it, you see a blue book. Yeah, so this was the Bible. And why do I say the Bible? Because you can see it's quite a thick book. It's about 634 pages. And at the company where I started in testing, we were in Belgium at that time the first company that brought testing services to the market, because it was never seen before that a software company, consultancy company, was providing dedicated services around testing. And you can imagine that testing was for a lot of customers very immature, and there was not so written about testing in books at that time. So I had only the thick blue Bible to rely on, to take with me in my luggage to each project, and to really preach according to the book and to apply. Of course, like I explained before, since the late 90s, we have a world of evolutions in all kinds of directions: automation, performance testing, security testing, whatsoever. And today with DevOps, AI, so now I think nearly you can find everything written in books. Even like in sports or in music and arts, we have our own testing gurus. Can you imagine? But what I've learned is that even along the path and the project that I did, that often I have to rely on my own experiences from past projects. But even on experience, maybe a little bit some gut feeling. Because at that moment, what I was confronted with, I had not a wealth of books to find an answer in it. And that's exactly what I want to tell. And I want to share some of those insights that I've learned along the path. And maybe some of those insights may sound really weird, but I will explain them. And I speak about insights because I don't want to speak about lessons learned, because lessons learned have the notion that I learned something and that's better than experiences of other people. And that's totally not the case. What I will tell you, it's not the truth, totally not. It's just personal experiences, and they are even good as your experiences, and maybe you will have similar experiences, or maybe you will have totally other experiences. But in the end, and that's why I wanted to attend this conference, it's about sharing experiences with people around the globe and to learn from each other. So, first insight of this day is transform to a no-sheep tester. Maybe you were thinking, what the hell do we have weight testers? What is the link between weight testers and sheeps? Well, look at this nice picture we see a lot of very nice sheeps, and they are looking very cute. But don't forget, we are looking to ourselves, because each of those sheeps, in fact, it's one of us testers, because that I experienced in project that we testers, we tend to bleed as a sheep, because in a lot of cases, we have valid reasons to complain, to say, for example, no decent requirements, or the requirements are vague, or I start writing my test cases and in the meantime, the specs have changed. Or where is the budget? We are running out of the budget. I want to do automation. There is no possibility. There is no tool. The planning is too tight. I don't have enough resources. Or test data is not prepared by the database administration. So just a couple of examples of complaints that we testers, we can bleed as sheeps. And if we living to the book, then we are, in most cases, we are 100% right to complain. Because in the book, we have learned that if you have no good requirements, then at least you should stop testing, because then one of your entry criteria have not been met, and you can go back to your analysts, to your developers to say, sorry guys, but I don't start. I need full good written requirements. But today, if we really played in that way, then I think that we testers, we will not be the nicest friends in the project team, because we have to move forward. There is a high pressure on project to deliver. So what my answer is, in all those cases, in fact, we testers, we have the own means to cope, to deal with this kind of situations. It's for example, look at this. Exploratory testing. This test type is the answer to cope with incomplete, vague, not well documented requirements, because it allows you to at least to start some testing, to explore, to use your gut feeling, your insights, your experience, to find a way through the application in order to test the functionalities and, of course, to try to find defects. Exploratory testing. Important to say is, of course, exploratory testing may not the only testing type in your project. Besides exploratory testing, you should have to do structured testing as well, but it's an ideal way, especially when you are with the business users and they don't have time enough, or they don't want to write your test cases up to the last letter. That's a very good way to use. Smoke and sanity test. That is something really according to the book. In the book, it says that at every new testing phase, we should start with a smoke and sanity test. There is nobody that tells you that if you have a battery of 100 test cases, that you should have to start as a full running blindly in the test execution, and then after 2 or 3 days, then you see, okay, I'm totally stuck. I have already spent 2 or 3 days, which is lost effort, and anyway, I have to wait. In that case, define upfront what are very basic scenarios, what are things that have to work anyway, and we go through that battery of sanity checks, and if those are okay, then we continue with the remaining test cases. If it's not okay, then let's go back to the project manager, test manager, developers. Then don't just bluntly say, okay, I stop, I wait, I do nothing, but look together, okay, maybe that functionality, that system is not possible to test, but maybe there are other parts in the application we can already start with. Selfies test data. Selfies test data, that's the way where you create yourself the test data that you need as a prerequisite to execute your test cases. Selfies test data can be created either through automation. So if you have an automated script, you can feed it with an Excel file, CSV file, XML file, whatsoever, and then populate your test system. Or as a kind of an indirect test of your application, you enter yourself manually the test data you need. Here again, in some cases that will not be possible, like for example, ERP, like SAP system. There, next to the transactional data, you need parameter data, you need master data, which is needed and if you don't have it, then even you cannot start with self-test data. But in some other cases, it can be a good way, at least to continue instead of waiting on your DBA to have your test data. And very important, if you start with specs that are changing or are not complete, at least start, but do very small iterations. And as soon as you detect that you have a deviation in behavior because the spec was not complete, or maybe the spec was wrong, then go back to your analyst or to your business to discuss, hey, look, this is what I found. Maybe we need to complete the spec, or maybe we need to write it more so that it is clear and no further interpretation for the different interpretations. So that are ways that we can transform to really no-sheep testers. Second message is fail fast in production before passing slow in test. Again, I've been told by the Blue Book and by other books and in my training and my education, you may never test in production. If you would do that, then you will be banned. You will be put on a list of unprofessional test consultants, and you may fear for your job, because that is totally not done. However, if you see more and more recent evolutions, and especially with the evolution towards more cloud, then you see more and more trends where people are saying, where voices are saying, maybe in some cases you have to test in production, because for some reason it's harder to set up your test environment. And typical example is, for example, in the performance test area. Even for just manual functional testing, it can be already nowadays very hard to get your test environment fully up and running, because we have a lot of interfaces, not only to internal system, but also to third-party services. And it can be hard to get them all set up in a test environment, and then, of course, next to the environment itself, to have been filled up with the right test data. And so for performance testing, it's even harder, because there it's often the question, do we have an environment, even if we have a UAT environment, to which degree is that environment production-like? Because especially in performance testing, it's important that we can test in a production-like environment. And so the question nowadays in modern QA is not if you will and would test in production. The question is when, at what time should you do it, and in which context. And here I listed some of the examples which may be a good and a valid reasons to do this kind of testing in production. Like I said, complex environments, performance and scalability. And two other things as like for usability. So if at a certain point in time, if usability becomes really important, let's say for mobile app development, your website should be usable in all the different ways, then it can be better that you test it in real production, not only by the business testers, but for example, by crowd testers. Crowd testing has one big benefit. In fact, it's a platform from testers around the world, which mainly have no link with your project, with your company. So they are open-minded. They just can subscribe to a campaign where, for example, a customer is looking, okay, I want to test my mobile application on dozens of different configurations of mobile phones, Apple, Samsung, Motorola, whatever. Or, for example, like we had recently such a crowd test campaign. It was an application about an EID, and the customer wanted to have a very diverse spread of people around the globe to ensure that their mobile app was compliant with all kinds of different EIDs from different countries, because they have all a specific format. And by doing this crowd test, we revealed that for some countries, there was an issue with the EID. Chaos engineering. Chaos engineering, that's a trend which is more coming from the operational side of companies, where on purpose you will start creating chaos. You will create chaos by on purpose. For example, you will shut down a database. You will pull out a network cable. You will, on purpose, stress an application server until it breaks. And you will understand that to simulate these things in a representative environment, it's very hard to do it in a UAT, in a test environment, and then it can be done in production. Important to say, I don't just say, okay, go blindly in production, do testing in production, whatever you want, whenever you want. There are some constraints, and of course, it needs to be in a structured and in a controlled way. And two famous ways to do that is what we called with A/B testing and a Canary release. What is it about? A/B testing it's often used in the to test usability, or for example, in the e-commerce, when, for example, a customer wants to know if we change the layout of a web page, of a web shop, by changing the colors, by changing buttons from the left menu to the right menu, what will be the conversion rate? Because of course, in the end, for web e-commerce, that's the thing where it's about. And what they do, they ensure that, and you can define what amount of users will get the A version, what amount of users will get the B version, and then based on some experiments in production with A/B testing, look what is the result towards your conversion. A Canary release is a little bit different. There you will prepare a new release of software, of an application with some new features in it. And in that case, you want to let experiment a part of your real production users with all the new features. And that can you do by pointing users to a certain router of load balancer, and for example to say, okay, we will start with 15% of our user community population will get the full version B. Then we will see, we will do a close follow-up how it goes. We do analysis, and if that goes well, then we can increase the group up to the level where finally your full user community is using version B. And then you can start for planning a next Canary release. So that are two famous and well-known mechanisms to guide and to do this production testing in a controlled way. The next insight is hope for the worst, fear for the best. This may really sound weird because in fact, the phrase is the other way around. It's hope for the best and fear for the worst. And what you see here, those smileys, that are the typical emotions that testers are experiences in projects. Testers are happy because they have found a bug. They are laughing because they find a funny bug, but they can be frustrated because they see that bugs are not solved quickly enough, or even if they have retested in the next release, the same bug is there is regression. They become angry, they become sad because whatever they have done, testers, even they are blamed by the business that it was never good enough. And this insight was and for that I have to tell you a small anecdote. My first project ever in testing, that was really according to the TestLab book from day one up to the last day. It even went so crazy that I got 2 or 3 days from my test coordinator to look up in the book which test design techniques are the good ones, which are applicable, and based on paper, I applied the techniques, I derived all the test cases, and then I went back to my test coordinator and say, okay, for this module, the system, we need this number of test cases. Second project, same customer, was horror. I cannot say it otherwise. It was a real nightmare. It was totally not according to the book. And of course, I thought at that time that, okay, every testing project was running according to the book, according to the TestLab Bible. And in that project, we had the head of the business users was coordinating the test. Although there was a test coordinator, but he was completely overruled. But that guy of the head of the business users, he had totally no clue about testing. And it went really so crazy that at a certain day, he came in our meeting room and he said, you have to look in the actual results. It was a batch program that was processing input data based on some business rule and was outputting data. He said, you have to look in the output data, so affect the actual results. And based on the output data, you have to derive your test cases to write what should be the test case and what should be the interactive. So it was really crazy. And at the time, I called my account manager and say, please get me out this hell. This is not testing. This is totally not according to the book. And of course, I was billable. So the account manager, he said, okay, please calm down, Wim, sleep, take some days rest, and then come back to the project because you will continue. And what I've learned there afterwards, of course, not when you are in the project, that you learn the most from the most tough and the most difficult projects. You don't realize that when you are in it, because then it feels really as the hell, nightmare, well, whatever you feel, sad, well, whatever bad emotion you can imagine. But taking a step back, looking back from a distance, then that are often very worthwhile projects. And that's based on that, I created my own, what I call the Resilience Manifesto. And the resilience, that's in fact the ability that a person has to get up in tough times. How resilient is someone if he have to fear a situation where he didn't thought about it or was never confronted with. The Resilience Manifesto, first, it's about become skilled at taking risks over defining risks. So everything which is at the right side of the Resilience Manifesto is what you should have to do according to the book and to the theory. Theory says we have in our test plans, we have to think about risk, we have to think about mitigations. But when you are in it, when you are in tough situations, you have to take the risks. And it's not longer about thinking, should I or shouldn't we? No, it's okay. this risk, okay, we do this, that can be the consequence, but okay, let's do it, let's take it, let's see if that can help us further in that tough situation. And if it has an adverse effect, let's deal again, and at that moment, see again what we should do in that situation. The second part of the Resilience Manifesto is value what you have, over insisting on entry, exit, acceptance criteria. Yes, and our test plans are full of those criteria, but look back at some of your recent test plans where you have written down all those kind of criteria. In how many cases are they really applied? In how many cases can you really say, okay, not fulfilled, we stop, we do nothing? No, and here I come back to my message about we have to transform to no-ship tester. In fact, we should say, okay, we live in an imperfect situation. What can we do with it? How can we get the most of the imperfections, the difficulties, the constraints we have? And let's do our utmost best to deal with it and to and not to insist, because if we continue insisting, it will never happen. The conditions will never be met, and we have to go forward. This means that we have to accept and learn from failures. Testing, it's okay. We have to look in a preventive way to defects, to find as much as possible errors. And failure sounds a little bit something, yeah, we may not have a failure. Failed test cases is not good. It's good that we have found them, but it's not good to have them, because it indicates poor quality. In such a situation, we have to create a safe environment to fail, to take failures, because if we take a risk, maybe it will go in a good direction, but maybe it will go in a totally direction which maybe bring us further down the line. But even at that moment, it's important that we don't start blaming people. We don't start blaming people inside the test team, but around the project, because at the end we are in the same boat, and we have to accept and to learn from failures. And if we can do that, then we will better understand what I call compassion for stakeholders instead of strict application. That refers me to go-no-go meetings I often had in projects, and where you are in the UAT phase, and then you come to the point where you have to decide, do we go into production, yes or no? From a testing point, maybe there are dozens of reasons to tell, no, we can't, because we have open defects. We didn't test all the test cases we have planned. We have still some doubts, but maybe it's good try to listen to the stakeholders. Why, for example, is the business overruling you? And I had it once in a project where we, in those kind of meetings, we were overruled every time. And that creates a lot of frustration. And then after when the meeting was out, we went to the coffee corner, and I started asking the business, okay, please, can you tell me why are you not listening to us? And they simply explained to me, look, marketing, they have made a plan. They have communicated in the public. It was all on the news. We have to follow, and the business didn't check with us if it was technically feasible to launch a new product, to have the software ready. So we have no other choice. We know it's not perfect. We have to go, and knowing the reasoning, knowing what tactics are playing in the background can better help you to have compassion for your stakeholders and maybe to lower the bar. That's about the Resilience Manifesto. Next insight is about rain always falls down from clouds. Yeah, maybe sounds logic, nothing new, you think, and that's what I recently see in discussions with customers about migrating to the cloud is that for them, it's often a reason to lower the activities for testing, especially for, again, performance testing, because they argue, why should we still invest in setting up performance testing, which is already hard to set it up in a good and a representative way, if we will move within 1 month to the cloud, knowing that in the cloud we can scale servers in all kind of direction. If the CPU is a problem at a certain point, no problem, we just spin another server up. So what's the problem? Why should we still care about the cloud? However, what at that moment, what the mistake they make in reasoning is that if you put a system or even a complete landscape which is a kind of crappy from a design, an architectural way, if you that put from on-premise in the cloud, of course, it will still be a crappy application and it will give you problems. An example, if you have an application which is what we call chatty, and a chatty application is typically an application that for every information request that it sends a query to the database, come back with the data, then you need another element, go send again a query to the database, go back with data, and so go back and forth for every piece of info you need. If you have such a situation from an architectural design in combination with a hybrid setup, hybrid meaning some components on-premise, some components in the cloud, then I can tell you it will give problems. It will give problems. So we need to do what we call cloud testing. And that's nowadays also for me quite confusing. What do we mean with cloud testing? I looked up on several sites and each time it was a little bit another interpretation than I have in mind. So what do we mean? Are we testing the cloud resources? So do we want to test the platform from Azure, from Amazon itself? Can be a valid case. Let's say that as a customer, you want to move to the cloud and you want to compare the both platforms in terms of functionalities, features, pricing, then in itself, it's a good test to test the cloud resources and to see if they pretend to offer your monitoring out of the box. Is it like that? And is information we have in those dashboards, is that the information we want? But do we mean with cloud testing, do we test application systems which are hosted in the cloud? That's another dimension in cloud testing. And finally, or do we mean with cloud testing, are we testing applications, can be on-premise or can be application in the cloud, by using the support of cloud-based tooling? For example, you can have test management tools which are hosted in the cloud. Nowadays you can do performance testing from cloud-based platforms like Octoperf, like Placemeter. So that's important if you are starting about thinking about discussing cloud testing in your project with your customer, to first define which type of cloud testing do you exactly mean. And even if it may sound very easy to do cloud testing, there are some challenges. Multi-tenancy, that's typically the fact that if your application is hosted in the cloud, of course that hosting provider is not reserving that cloud instance for you alone. So at the end, there are infrastructure on which other companies, customers, applications are hosted. And how are those applications impacting your applications in terms of resources, in terms of memory in case they are shared. So that's something to take in mind. Latency, especially in hybrid situations, that can be an issue. That when your application have to communicate back with on-premise components, that you experience a latency, lack of control. In some at cloud providers, even if you are admin, some features are not possible. For example, there are cloud tools in which you can create what we call a workspace of projects, but you cannot delete the workspace yourself. That need to be requested. Or there are cloud vendors that are, if you want to do a stress test, you have to request it in advance. You have to explain what you are planning to do, and you have to provide the full, complete test strategy. Hidden cost, that was a pitfall on one of the projects. They hosted everything in the cloud. They said, okay, it's easy, we can duplicate our test environment, so we have a full production. Then they duplicated the production environment. But what I forgot is, as long as the servers are running, even if they are not used for testing, there is a cost linked with it. And based on the tiers you have chosen, the CPU, the memory configuration, then it can be a very expensive invoice that every month is running out. Security and privacy, that's maybe common, that's maybe an open door. Nowadays, we see more and more customers say, okay, we are open to move to the cloud. In some cases, it's not allowed for privacy, GDPR reasons. And end-to-end testing can maybe hard, especially if you have to rely on external web services which are hosted on their part in the cloud to have everything set up and available to do your end-to-end test. The next insight, as the last insight, is what I call gutter crap. And sorry for it's a little bit vulgar slang English, but what does it mean? If you look it up, it means get to the point, state the real situation. And I had to admit that in the project where I was test coordinator, test manager, that I often make that mistake. We come with well prepared. First of all, we have our test strategy or test plans, but then when it comes to metrics, to collecting information about the test execution, we have all those kind of nice dashboards full of data. And in our status meetings with the project stakeholders, we present them, we smash them down with all kind of metrics where people are completely overwhelmed. And then I start by, like I told before, the story where we were each time overruled. One other remark that the business gave us to us, they told us, guys, whatever you present in that meeting, it's so many information, and we trust that the information you present, that it's the correct state, but it's way too much. In fact, what we want to know is, and that's where I want to change the phrase to cut the crap. We want to know, is my application doing the basic main activities? And then we come to one of the famous test design techniques, the CRUD: create, read, update, and delete. Because at the end of the day, that's in fact the most important question, where you have to be able to answer to your stakeholders, to your business. Can I enter data? Can I create a customer? Can I create a policy? And if I have entered some data, can I retrieve it? Maybe, can I retrieve it directly? What about the data that I have entered yesterday? Can I retrieve it? Can I make updates? Because, for example, in my customer details, my account details, I want to change my billing address. I want to change my invoice address. My phone number has been changed. I should be able to change it. And if I have changed it, the next day, will I see the change updated? Will I see the change reflected, for example, on my bill? When I get my bill for my mobile phone, will I see that now the paper bill is sent to the right billing address? And in some cases, I am able to delete information by data that I have created on mistake, by making a typo, but by removing a product. If I have a mobile subscription and I have a feature and I don't any longer need that feature, I want to remove it so that I will pay less the next month. So that are the main questions. And based on that insight, I start reasoning, and I thought maybe we need to have rephrase a little bit and present the information in another way. And then I did some small experiments in project with what I called defining the CRUD point. And the CRUD point is in fact defining when is testing enough. Because, okay, in the ideal world, we can test, we can continue to test, and it's not possible to test everything. So we need to take again some risks based on the context. And you see, for example, in the left example, where if you have to test a website for a one-off event, just think at a ticketing website. Maybe it's not necessary to go the full way in your testing. Because, for example, and I had that with one of my favorite football club in Belgium, when I wanted to order season tickets for the next season. Then it was announced that Monday morning at 9 o'clock, the website will be open. Website was completely down. People were complaining on social media, but in fact, they knew the tickets would be sought anyway. So maybe, and it's just a personal opinion, maybe they have thought, okay, the demand is bigger than what we have, so let's do some small testing, but we will not definitely go for all kind of testing and to adapt. Like, for example, you will need in a home banking. And I think it's in other countries, but what I see in Belgium, that more and more bankings are closing their physical offices and are pushing people towards digital banking, home banking applications through websites. So then for a bank offering a very good working application or website is key. It becomes the core business. And there you cannot afford you to say, okay, we will do some minimal testing. We will not care too much about security, about performance, about usability. No, because there is a lot of competition out there. And in such an example, the critical point will be defined higher up, and you will need to invest more in testing. And that were just a few of the insights I wanted to share, and the main message behind this is whatever you are doing in testing, whatever access you have to literature, to colleagues, to testing gurus, on web conferences, be open for it. First of all, be open for it. But at the end, use the pieces that are relevant for you, because not every book or not every methodology will fit to your situation. or maybe will fit to the situation where you're in. Maybe books will describe more the ideal world, and know that in most cases, in practice and reality, it's often the other way around. And then at that time, just dare to use and to rely on past experiences, on maybe part of gut feeling, creating your own, like, and that what I on purpose created a little bit some weird formulation of the insights, but just dare it, and break project after project. You will just expand your knowledge, your expertise, and prepare you better for the next project. And hereby I want to add my presentation. If you have questions, if you want to share, if you totally don't agree with me, fine. You see my my email address. You have my LinkedIn. Don't hesitate to get in contact with me. Even if you are just starting in testing, please don't hesitate, because that is what I see working with a lot of young people, but people that are new in testing. They have often very fresh ideas. They look from a different angle to the things, and which is even for us people already some longer in testing can be very useful, or at least make us thinking and make us remaining critical, because at the end of the day, being critical, that's one of the assets of every tester. Thank you.